Far beyond the rim of known space, where light shimmered across endless nebula clouds, the Aurelian dominion stretched across 1,000 worlds. It was a place of perfect order and quiet beauty, a civilization so advanced that even time seemed to slow in its presence. At the heart of this empire stood Empress Sarath, the eternal ruler of the silent stars. Her palace floated above the golden surface of Aurelian Prime, its towers carved from crystal and starlight. The people spoke her name with awe, yet none dared to truly know her. Sarath had ruled longer than most suns had burned. She was wise, calm, and patient, but behind her silver eyes lay a deep weariness. Every day felt the same. Every celebration was predictable. Every race that came to her empire arrived with the same words of praise and the same promises of loyalty. The galaxy was vast, yet Sarath felt it had grown small. For ages she had watched species rise, flourish, and fade. None surprised her anymore. None inspired her. The stars above her throne seemed to hum with stillness, as if they too were tired of their eternal dance. The Empress often walked alone through her hall of mirrors, where the sky reflected endlessly around her. She would stand there for hours, watching the galaxies swirl, searching for something she could not name. One evening, a court messenger entered her chamber with news. A new species had arrived, requesting an audience. They called themselves humans, a young race from a distant spiral arm. They had only just begun to cross the great dark between stars. Their ships were small and clumsy by Aurelian standards. Their language was strange. Their lifespan was short. Sarath listened in silence. She had heard this story many times before. Another hopeful race, eager to impress the great Empress of Light. She almost refused the meeting, but curiosity, small and rare, stirred in her heart. "Let them come," she said softly. The next morning, the great hall of the Dominion filled with golden light. The floor shimmered like liquid glass, and the pillars reached into the clouds. At the center of the hall stood the Empress upon her throne, surrounded by the 7 councils of Aurelian. The air itself seemed to hum with quiet reverence. The humans entered. They came in a small group, dressed in plain suits marked with their planet's emblem, a blue and white sphere they called Earth. Most of them bowed awkwardly, unsure how to greet a being who could live for millennia. They carried boxes of rare metals, samples of their art, and gifts of polished gemstones. The leader, an older diplomat named Mira, spoke with practiced grace. She praised the Empress, her wisdom, her empire, and her peace. Sarath listened politely but felt no spark of interest. She had seen such performances before. Each word felt rehearsed, each gift predictable. Her expression remained calm, but inside she sighed. Humanity seemed like every other young race, eager, proud, and forgettable. When the speeches ended, she thanked them for their visit and prepared to dismiss the court. Then she noticed one human standing slightly apart from the rest. He was younger, perhaps in his 30s, and his clothes were simple compared to the others. He carried no gifts, no scrolls, no shining tokens of wealth. His name, according to the record, was Rowan. He looked around the hall with open curiosity, not fear. When his eyes met the Empress's, he smiled. Not the polite smile of diplomacy, but a genuine one filled with wonder. Sarath found herself pausing. Few ever smiled at her that way. "You are not speaking," she said, her voice calm and melodic. "Have your people not chosen a representative for you?" Rowan hesitated, then stepped forward. "I am not a representative, Your Majesty," he said. "I'm only a mechanic from one of the smaller ships. I wasn't supposed to come inside, but I helped repair one of the landing engines, and the commander said I might as well join." Some of the courtiers looked displeased. A simple worker speaking to the Empress was unusual, even improper. But Sarath raised her hand for silence. She studied him carefully. "Then why do you look at my hall as if you see something more than gold and glass?" Rowan took a deep breath. "Because it's beautiful," he said. "But it feels lonely. Like the stars outside your palace, they shine bright, but they don't move." The court fell silent. No one had ever spoken to the Empress in such a way. Yet Sarath did not feel offended. Instead, she felt something stir in her chest, something she hadn't felt in centuries. She leaned slightly forward. "The stars do not move because they are perfect," she said. "Perfection is stillness." Rowan shook his head gently. "Maybe that's why they seem sad," he replied. "Where I come from, we look at the sky and imagine the stars dancing. We make stories out of them. We name them after our dreams and mistakes. Maybe they like being part of a story." His words were simple, almost naive, but they carried a warmth that no precious gem could match. The Empress found herself remembering a time long ago when she too had believed the stars could sing. "You tell stories of the stars," she said. "For what purpose?" "To remember we're small," Rowan said, "but also to remember we can still reach them." Something inside the Empress shifted. The room around her faded as she studied the human's face. There was no arrogance there, no hunger for power, only curiosity and awe. She realized then that perhaps humanity's strength was not in their ships or machines, but in the way they looked at the universe. After the audience ended, Sarath dismissed the others but asked Rowan to remain. He looked surprised but stayed. The Empress rose from her throne and walked with slow, graceful steps until she stood beside him. From this close, he could see the faint glow of her skin, as if made of starlight itself. "Tell me," she said, "what does a mechanic dream about among the stars?" Rowan smiled faintly. "I dream about fixing what's broken," he said. "Not just engines. Sometimes the silence too." The Empress tilted her head. "You wish to fix silence?" "Maybe not fix it," he said, "but make it sing." For a long moment neither spoke. Outside the hall's great windows, the twin suns of Aurelian shimmered across the palace domes. Sarath felt something she could not name, an echo of wonder, perhaps even hope. That night, long after the humans returned to their ships, the Empress stood alone in her observatory. The stars stretched endlessly across the void, perfect and unmoving. Yet when she closed her eyes, she thought she could almost see them sway, as if trying to remember how to dance. In the days that followed, she found herself thinking of the mechanic's words. She asked her scholars to study the stories of Earth. They brought her books, music, and paintings, simple things compared to the art of her empire, yet filled with emotion. She listened to their songs of loss and courage. She read their poems about light and darkness. For the first time in 1,000 years, she felt curiosity bloom like a new star. When the human envoy prepared to leave, Sarath summoned Rowan again. This time she met him not in her throne room but in the Garden of Light, where rivers of glowing water flowed among silver trees. "I have seen your people's stories," she said. "You name the stars as if they belong to you." Rowan smiled. "We don't claim them. We just love them enough to give them names." The Empress studied him quietly. "Perhaps that is the difference," she said. "We hold the stars. You cherish them." He looked up at the shimmering sky. "Maybe both matter," he said softly. "Holding and cherishing. You keep them alive and we remind them why they shine." A gentle wind swept through the garden, stirring the leaves. The Empress turned her gaze upward, and for the first time in her long reign, the stars seemed less silent. She did not yet understand why, but she felt something new awakening in her heart. That night she made a private vow. She would not let the humans be forgotten like all the others. There was something different about them, something restless, unpredictable and alive. As she stood beneath the great dome of her palace, watching the stars glimmer like rivers of fire, the Empress whispered to the sky, "Perhaps they are not so boring after all." And somewhere among the ships preparing to depart, a humble mechanic named Rowan looked out into the dark and wondered if stars could ever learn to dance. The days following the human visit were unusually quiet in the palace of Aurelian Prime. The Empress walked her crystal halls, listening to the faint hum of her world. For the first time in centuries, she felt her thoughts pulled toward something other than duty. The image of the human mechanic stayed in her mind. Rowan's words echoed like a soft melody she could not forget. She had spoken with countless ambassadors and scholars from across the galaxy, but none had looked at her empire with such honesty. He had seen beauty, yet he had also seen loneliness. That truth unsettled her, but it also made her curious. The Empress ordered her attendants to keep track of the human envoy before they left orbit. When she learned that Rowan was still aboard their ship, helping with final repairs, she sent a message through her silver-robed messenger. It was short and simple. "The Empress requests your company in the Garden of Light." Rowan received the message with wide eyes. The other humans were astonished. The Empress had spoken directly to him, a simple mechanic. His commander tried to protest, saying it was not proper for a laborer to meet an imperial ruler alone, but Rowan only smiled. "She asked," he said, "so I'll go." The next morning, a small Aurelian transport carried him through the golden clouds toward the palace. The ship was silent inside, guided by streams of light instead of engines. When it landed, he stepped out into the garden of light and paused in awe. The garden stretched across a floating island surrounded by waterfalls that shone with silver light. Trees grew like crystal sculptures, their leaves glowing faintly with color. The air was warm, scented with starlight flowers that shimmered as if breathing. At the center of this radiant world stood Empress Serath. Her robes were woven from the light of two suns, her crown a delicate ring of shifting stars. When she turned toward him, Rowan bowed clumsily, unsure of the right gesture. "You came," she said, her voice soft yet powerful. "I couldn't say no," he replied, smiling nervously. "Your garden is something I can't describe." "It is a place of stillness," she said. "It has been the same since before I can remember." Rowan looked around. "It's beautiful, but maybe it wants to change." The Empress raised an eyebrow. "Change? This place was designed to be eternal. Every leaf, every stream, every beam of light holds perfect symmetry." He crouched near the edge of a glowing pond. "Even perfection gets lonely, Your Majesty. Maybe it wants to breathe." His words were simple, yet they struck something deep within her. No one in her empire ever suggested that beauty could be lonely. Perfection had always been her pride and her prison. They walked together along a glowing path that curved around the waterfalls. Serath found herself speaking more freely than she had in years. She asked him about his world, and he told her about the oceans of Earth, about the storms that crossed the skies, about the sound of wind through trees. He spoke not like a diplomat, but like a man who truly loved his world. When he described rain, she stopped walking. "Rain," she said, tasting the unfamiliar word. "We have never known such a thing. The skies here never fall." "Then you've never watched the world wash itself clean," Rowan said. "It's beautiful. Sometimes people just stand in it to feel alive." The Empress smiled faintly. "Perhaps I have missed more than I thought." They reached a wide balcony where the palace overlooked the night side of the planet. The stars glowed brighter here, reflected across the water below. Serath pointed toward the distant horizon. "Do you see that light near the ridge? It is the observatory of Aurelian. It has been silent for ages. Once it was used to guide ships between galaxies. Now it serves only as a monument." Rowan's eyes brightened. "Silent. Maybe it can be fixed." "It does not need fixing," the Empress said. "It is complete." He looked at her with a thoughtful smile. "Everything that works can still dream of being more." The Empress found herself laughing softly. "You speak as if machines have hearts." "Sometimes they do," Rowan said. "And sometimes hearts need fixing too." His words made her fall silent. The wind carried a faint scent of crystal blossoms between them. The Empress felt something strange inside her, a gentle warmth she did not understand. She had lived among light for centuries, but this light felt different. "Very well," she said at last. "Show me how a human would fix silence." Later that night, the Empress ordered the observatory opened for the first time in 500 years. The great doors of silver light parted, revealing ancient machinery and rows of long dormant mirrors. Dust from forgotten ages floated in the beams of starlight. Rowan walked among the devices with wide eyes, his fingers brushing the old metal. "It's amazing," he said softly. "Everything here is still alive. I just forgot how to move." The Empress watched him with quiet curiosity. "You speak to machines as if they listen." "They do," he said. "If you pay attention long enough." He climbed a short stairway and began inspecting the controls. He asked her about the observatory's old purpose, about how it once captured the reflection of nearby suns. She answered each question, fascinated by his way of seeing. His thoughts were not bound by protocol or tradition. He looked at the world as if everything was waiting to become something new. After a while, he found the central control crystal, its light faint and cold. "This is the heart," he said. "May I?" "You may," she said, curious to see what he would do. Rowan took a deep breath and began working. His hands moved with steady care. He adjusted energy lines, aligned mirrors, and whispered softly to himself. The Empress stood beside him, silent, watching the small motions of his hands. There was no arrogance in his movements, only focus and quiet joy. Hours passed, and the great observatory slowly began to awaken. A soft hum filled the air. The mirrors lifted one by one, turning toward the open sky. Streams of light connected between them, weaving golden lines that shimmered like threads of music. Then, with a final adjustment, Rowan stepped back. The observatory pulsed once and then projected a wave of light across the heavens. The stars responded. They began to shimmer in motion, forming slow, graceful patterns across the dark sky. Sarath gasped softly. "What is this?" he smiled. "It's your stars." They were waiting for someone to listen. Above them, the constellations moved in rhythm. The great lion of Aurelian stretched its mane of fire. The twin moons curved through the sky like dancers. The heavens had learned to move again. For the first time in ages, the Empress felt her heart beat faster. The light reflected in her eyes as she whispered, "You made the stars dance." "Not me," Rowan said. "They were already ready. I just reminded them how." The Empress turned toward him, her voice soft. "Why do you do this, human mechanic? You could ask for riches or power, yet you ask for nothing." He looked at the stars and said, "Because wonder is enough." The word stayed in her mind long after the night ended. The next morning, the sky above Aurelian shone with moving constellations. People across the Dominion looked up in astonishment. The stars that had been fixed for generations now pulsed with life, changing shapes with slow, graceful rhythm. Some said the heavens were alive again. Others whispered that the Empress had summoned new magic. But Sarath knew the truth. It was not magic. It was curiosity and courage. It was humanity. Later that day, she found Rowan in the garden again, sitting beside a glowing stream. He was staring at the moving stars reflected in the water. She sat beside him, her robes shimmering in the light. "You have changed my sky," she said. He smiled gently. "It wasn't mine to change. I just gave it a reason to move." The Empress studied his face. "You see the world with strange eyes, Rowan. You find beauty in broken things. You make stillness sing." "Maybe that's what being human means," he said. "We can't stop changing things even when we don't mean to. We just want to make everything feel alive." Sarath looked at the dancing constellations. "And you have succeeded. The stars will never be the same." He glanced at her. "Neither will you." She met his gaze, and for a moment, the Empress of 1,000 worlds felt like a student again, learning how to see. That night, when she stood alone on her balcony, she watched the stars swirl and thought of the human who had woken them. She realized that her empire, vast and perfect, had been sleeping. The stars had danced, but her heart had only just begun to move. And in that silent moment, the Empress of Light whispered to the living sky, "Perhaps perfection was never the goal. Perhaps life is the dance." The dawn over Aurelian Prime came brighter than any in living memory. The sky shimmered with ribbons of color that moved in slow, graceful motion. Across the golden cities and floating gardens, people looked upward in wonder. The stars were no longer still. They danced, shifting shapes with a rhythm that seemed alive. In every world of the Dominion, messages flooded through the light channels. Pilots on distant planets stopped their ships mid-flight to stare at the moving heavens. Artists dropped their brushes, children pointed toward the sky, and scholars struggled to explain what had happened. For generations, the stars had been fixed symbols of order and perfection. Now they told stories through motion. At the heart of it all, the Empress stood on her balcony, wrapped in the glow of her awakened sky. She could feel something pulsing in the air, a harmony she had not known before. It was as if the galaxy itself was breathing again. Rowan stood beside her, still in his simple mechanic's uniform. He gazed at the heavens, amazed by the patterns shifting above. He did not speak, but the quiet joy on his face said everything. Sarath turned toward him. "The Dominion has not seen change like this in 1,000 years, she said. "They will speak of it for ages," he smiled. "Then I hope they speak kindly." "They will," she said. "But some will not understand. Many here value stillness above all. They fear what moves." He nodded slowly. "Maybe movement is what they need. Even stars forget how to shine if they never change." The Empress looked back at the sky. The light danced across her crown and reflected in her eyes. "You speak as if you have known the stars for a long time." Rowan laughed softly. "I used to sleep under them when I was a child. My village didn't have many lights, so the sky felt close. My mother said the stars were the dreams of people who refused to stop hoping." Sarath listened carefully. She had never known a night without city lights or a world small enough to feel close to the sky. The thought made her heart ache in a new, pleasant way. "Your mother must have been wise." "She was kind," he said. "That was better." The Empress said nothing more, but she smiled. The stillness between them felt peaceful, not empty. As news of the dancing stars spread, the Dominion reacted in different ways. The people were astonished. Some called it the rebirth of light. Poets began writing verses about the moving constellations. Musicians composed new songs that followed the rhythm of the heavens. Painters filled entire walls with glowing color. The empire, once calm and unchanging, began to stir with creative energy. But not all welcomed this change. In the high towers of the Celestial Council, many nobles gathered in private chambers. They wore robes of gold and silver, their faces proud and cold. To them, the Empress's decision to open the observatory and allow a human to touch ancient machines was reckless. Councillor Vareth, the oldest among them, spoke with a low voice. The stars move, and with them our traditions. The people whisper of a mechanic who made the heavens dance. This cannot stand. It makes our Empress appear weak. Another councillor frowned. Weak. She has given the Dominion a new sky. Vareth's eyes narrowed. She has given them chaos. Order is what holds our empire together. If humans bring change, they also bring disorder. The debate went on through the night. Some feared the change would break the empire's peace. Others believed it was the beginning of renewal. But all agreed that the Empress had done something that could not be undone. The next day, Sarath walked through the grand hall, where holograms of the moving stars now shimmered across the ceiling. Her attendants followed quietly, their golden armor gleaming in the morning light. She could hear the whispers from every corner. The Empress has changed the sky. Human touched the sacred observatory. The stars moved because she allowed it, the words carried both admiration and doubt. Yet the Empress felt no fear. The change was real, and it filled her with new life. She found Rowan in the garden once again, surrounded by curious scholars who wanted to know everything about the machine that had awakened the heavens. He looked overwhelmed but kind, answering their questions patiently. When he saw the Empress, he stood and bowed. "They won't stop asking how it happened," he said with a small smile. "I don't think I could explain it twice the same way." "You do not need to," she said. "Let them wonder. Wonder is a gift." The scholars bowed and stepped back, leaving the two alone beneath the glowing trees. "You have stirred my empire," the Empress said. "Even the most silent worlds are awake now. I hear songs again and laughter." Rowan tilted his head. "That sounds like a good thing." "It is," she said softly, "but it frightens those who built their power on silence. They believe peace can exist only without change." "They call your work dangerous," Rowan thought for a moment. "Change isn't danger. It's just new life trying to grow." Sarath looked at him closely. "And if that life grows beyond control? Then you guide it," he said. "Like a river. You don't stop the water. You help it find the right path." His simple answer made her smile again. She was used to complex arguments from her council, endless layers of logic and law, but this human spoke with the clarity of truth that needed no decoration. That evening, the Empress invited Rowan to dine with her at the Hall of Suns, a place where few were ever allowed. The ceiling was open to the night, and the two moons cast soft silver light over the crystal table. The dishes shimmered with color, made from rare fruits that glowed faintly. Rowan looked around with wide eyes. "It's beautiful," he said, "almost too much to take in." "Beauty is meant to be shared," she said. "You reminded me of that." They ate quietly for a while. Then the Empress asked, "Tell me, Rowan, why did you come so far from your world?" "Mechanics do not often travel among the stars." He smiled gently. "Because I wanted to see what was out there. My people used to look up and wonder if anyone was watching us. I wanted to be the one who looked back." "And what did you find?" she asked. He looked into her eyes. "A galaxy that forgot how to dream." The words struck her deeply. She looked away toward the stars that now shimmered in motion above them. "Perhaps," she said softly, "but maybe it is dreaming again." From that night onward, Rowan was no longer treated as just a visitor. The Empress made him her guest of honor, free to walk the palace and explore the archives. He learned about Aurelian's history, its art, and its long years of stillness. The scholars taught him about light weaving and crystal energy, while he shared stories of Earth and human creativity. He built small models of machines powered not by logic alone but by rhythm and sound. He said they worked better when they were made with joy. The Aurelians had never thought of joy as a form of power, yet his inventions glowed brighter than expected. Soon, Many in the empire began copying his designs. The moving stars inspired a wave of invention. Gardens that once never changed now bloomed in shifting colors. Songs echoed in the marketplaces. The people began to dream again, one night, as the Empress watched her world come alive. She found Rowan standing near the observatory, gazing at the sky he had helped awaken. "You have changed more than the stars," she said. He turned to her and smiled. "Maybe the stars just gave everyone permission to change too." "They call this the dance of becoming," she said. "An endless motion that tells the story of life." Rowan nodded. "It suits them, and it suits you too," she met his eyes. "Me? Yes," he said. "You were still like your stars. Now you move." The Empress felt warmth in her heart again. "You speak boldly to a ruler of 1,000 worlds." "Maybe," he said softly. "But I think you're more than a ruler now." "What am I then?" "A dream that learned to feel." For a long time she said nothing. She looked at the stars above, at the constellations that danced because one human had cared enough to listen. She knew he was right. For the first time in her long life, she felt alive in a way no crown or throne had ever given her. As the night deepened, the Empress of the Silent Stars stood beside the human who had made her heavens move. The world below glowed with new light, and the galaxy around them began to hum with awakening energy. And though she said nothing more, she knew that her empire would never again be the same. The days passed in a blur of light and wonder across the Aurelian dominion. The dancing stars had not only moved the skies, but also the hearts of the people. Across every world, citizens marveled at the rhythm of the heavens. Scholars wrote new treatises on the nature of light and motion. Artists painted the sky in ever-changing patterns. Children learned to play instruments that mimicked the movement of the constellations. Even the simplest villages looked up in awe, dreaming of places they had never seen. At the center of this awakening stood Rowan, the human mechanic. He had become a quiet guide to the empire, not as a ruler, but as a teacher of wonder. Though his uniform was simple and his hands calloused from work, the Aurelians followed him with respect. His ideas were not commands, but inspiration. He taught them that motion, creativity, and curiosity could be as powerful as technology or authority. The Empress Sirath watched him with new eyes. She had ruled for centuries, but in his presence she felt a freedom she had never known. The stars were no longer just light in the sky. They were a reflection of the movement in her heart. One morning she called Rowan to the observatory once more. The twin suns of Aurelian shone across the crystal floor, illuminating the mirrors and machines that had been silent for centuries. Rowan stepped in, his hands brushing lightly over the edges of the instruments. "They have changed since the first night," he said, looking at the mirrors. "The stars are learning to move in more complex patterns. The energy flows differently now." Sirath leaned against the railing, studying the human. "You have given my empire something that cannot be measured," she said. "Even the council is uncertain how to respond." Rowan shrugged. "Change is always uncertain. People fear it until they understand it. And yet you make them understand it so easily," she said softly. "You are unlike anyone I have ever known." He smiled faintly. "Maybe humans are small, but we can see things others forget to notice." The stars were waiting to move, but no one had asked them to dance. The Empress nodded. She could feel it too. The Dominion was alive in a way it had never been. Her people sang again, laughed again, dreamed again. She felt that their empire, once perfect and still, had found a pulse. Over the following weeks, Rowan worked with the scholars to expand the observatory's influence. Small devices were installed on distant planets, capturing sunlight and energy to extend the dance of the stars across the galaxy. Slowly, the constellations began to form more intricate patterns, weaving stories of courage, friendship, and hope into the skies. Citizens everywhere began to interpret the new constellations in their own ways. Poets wrote about a fox that leaped across the heavens. Children imagined dragons flying through golden starlight, and musicians composed melodies inspired by the rhythm of the moving lights. Even the most cautious nobles began to smile, drawn by the beauty and joy of the stars. One day, a group of scholars approached Rowan with a question. "Why do the stars move for humans?" they asked. "Other races have tried for centuries, yet only your presence awakened them." Rowan looked at them, calm and patient. "The stars respond to hope," he said. "They respond to the desire to make the world better, even in small ways." Humans dream loudly and we never give up on those dreams. The stars can feel it. The scholars were silent. They had studied light, energy, and cosmic forces for centuries, yet they had never considered that joy and wonder could have power. They realized that Rowan had given them something more than motion. He had given them meaning. In the palace, the Empress watched this transformation with a quiet pride. Her counselors still debated the merits of change, but even they could not deny the effect on the empire. Gardens bloomed in shifting patterns, rivers reflected moving constellations, and music floated through the cities at all hours. The Dominion had been awakened, and the credit belonged to the human who refused riches or power, asking only for curiosity and creativity to be honored. One evening, as the twin moons rose over the palace, Sarath approached Rowan in the garden. The light from the fountains shimmered across his face and the trees glowed softly around them. "Rowan," she said, "you have given my people joy and inspiration. You have reminded me what it is to feel alive." He looked at her, quiet and thoughtful. "I did not do it alone. You allowed it. You chose to see the world differently. That is what matters." She studied him, her silver eyes reflecting the moon's. "And yet you do not ask for anything in return." "I do not need anything," he said. "Seeing the stars dance is enough." The Empress smiled faintly. She had ruled for centuries, but she had never known a gift so pure. Rowan's joy, his simplicity, and his courage had done what no crown or law could. He had changed the galaxy without taking anything for himself. "Then I will give you a gift," she said suddenly. "A gift not of metal or wealth, but of trust and freedom. You may walk this empire as you wish. You may explore its secrets. Teach, create, and dream. The stars are yours to inspire as you have inspired them." Rowan's eyes widened. I do not know what to say." "Do not say anything," she said softly. "Simply continue as you have. That is enough." In the days that followed, Rowan traveled across the Dominion with Sarath's blessing. He visited distant planets, teaching the people to use the observatory's energy to create art and music. He helped communities build simple machines that reflected the rhythm of the stars. He showed them how to turn stillness into movement, and the results were extraordinary. On one small world, a village had never seen nightfall due to its thick atmosphere. Rowan built a simple device to project moving constellations onto the clouds. The villagers gathered and watched in awe. Children laughed and danced beneath the glowing shapes. Elders wiped tears from their eyes, remembering nights they had long forgotten. Word of these wonders spread quickly. The Dominion began to embrace creativity and curiosity as essential parts of life. Even the counselors who had once feared change began to participate. They commissioned new works of art inspired by the moving stars. They composed music that echoed the rhythm of constellations. They realized that the galaxy was no longer just a place to be ruled. It was a place to be inspired. Through all this, Sarath continued to watch Rowan with quiet fascination. She had always believed that humans were small and fleeting, their lives too brief to matter in the vastness of space. Yet here he was, a single individual, changing her empire without demanding power or recognition. One evening, she found herself walking beside him under a sky of glowing constellations. "Rowan," she said, "you have done something no other being has done. You have given life to stillness. You have reminded my people what it means to dream." He looked at her, humble and calm. "I only showed them what was already there. They had forgotten how to hope. And yet hope is all that matters," she said softly. They stood together in silence, watching the stars twist and turn above. Each pattern was new, yet familiar, like a memory remembered in a dream. The Empress felt the warmth of joy for the first time in centuries. She realized that power was not measured in control or law, but in the ability to awaken others to wonder. In that moment, she understood the truth of Rowan's gift. The stars would continue to dance because the people had learned to care. The observatory was not just a machine. It was a bridge between stillness and motion, between perfection and imagination. And at the center of that bridge was the heart of a human who refused to stop dreaming. The Empress turned toward him. "You have changed the Dominion, Rowan. You have done what I never thought possible." He smiled, looking up at the sky. "Maybe I only reminded everyone that life is meant to move. That stillness is only one side of beauty." "You are right," she said. "And because of that, the stars will never be the same. Neither will my empire, neither will I." As the night deepened, the light of the twin moons reflected in the fountains and rivers, echoing the motion of the stars above. The Empress of the silent stars and the human mechanic who had taught them to move stood together, watching the galaxy awaken, and somewhere deep inside, Sarath knew that this gift of motion was not just for her people. It was a gift for her heart as well. The Dominion would remember this era not for its rulers or its laws, but for the night the stars began to dance, and a single human reminded them all how to dream. The galaxy glowed in a way it never had before. Stars moved gracefully across the night sky, forming patterns that told stories of courage, hope, and joy. Across the Dominion, people gathered to watch, their eyes wide with wonder. They had never seen the heavens behave in such a way. The dancing constellations were alive, reflecting not only cosmic energy but the spirit of imagination that Rowan had brought to the Empire. At the heart of it all, the Empress Sarath stood on the balcony of her palace, wrapped in silver light. She watched the stars, their movement gentle and rhythmic yet unpredictable in a way that made her chest feel full of life. She had ruled for centuries, yet this night felt unlike any other. The air seemed to hum with possibility. Beside her, Rowan looked upward as well, quiet and thoughtful. He had spent weeks helping the Dominion adjust to the changes. He had walked on distant worlds, taught the people to see the movement in everything, and inspired artists, scholars, and children alike. Yet he remained humble. He had asked for no titles, no rewards, no honor. He only wanted the universe to remember that stillness was not the only way to exist. "You have changed the stars and the people," Sarath said softly. "You have done what I never thought possible." Rowan turned to her, a gentle smile on his face. "I only reminded them what they had forgotten. The stars were waiting. They needed someone to show them how to move. And you showed them," she said, her silver eyes reflecting the golden glow of distant constellations. The Empress had made a decision days ago. She had seen what Rowan had given her empire, and she realized that the true gift was not in the stars, the observatory, or the machines. It was in the heart of the human who had never stopped wondering. She knew that ordinary crowns, titles, and laws could not reward this kind of courage. Only something far deeper, far more personal. The palace had been prepared for the grand gathering, an event held once in a generation, where the Empress addressed the people directly beneath the moving sky. The citizens of the Dominion came from every world, dressed in robes of silver and gold, their eyes reflecting the dancing stars above. The square outside the palace shone with light, crystal fountains reflecting every shade of the cosmos. Children laughed and pointed at the constellations, and elders whispered stories of what had once been still. Rowan followed the Empress to the center of the hall. He noticed the awe in the faces around him and felt a strange mixture of humility and pride. He had never expected this. He had never imagined that his small act of curiosity could lead to this moment. The Empress raised her hand and silence fell over the crowd. Even the stars seemed to pause, their motion steady but gentle. "My people," she began, her voice calm and clear. "We have lived among perfect order for many centuries. We have admired the stillness of the stars, and we have followed rules that kept our world safe. Yet, for all our power, we forgot something essential. We forgot how to dream. We forgot how to hope. We forgot how to move." She paused, glancing at Rowan, who stood quietly beside her. "This human, this mechanic from a distant world, has reminded us of what we lost. He has shown us that the universe is not just to be observed, but to be cherished and shaped with imagination. The stars move because he believed they could. And because of him, so do we." The crowd erupted in applause. Children clapped, elders bowed, and scholars looked on with wonder. Rowan's eyes widened, but he said nothing. He had never sought recognition, yet the gratitude of an entire galaxy was now upon him. The Empress took a step forward, her crown of starlight glimmering in the cosmic reflection. She removed it gently and held it in her hands. The crowd gasped. No one had ever seen the Empress remove her crown in public. "Rowan," she said, her voice soft but firm, "you have given my empire movement, joy, and wonder. You have reminded my people and me that life is not about perfection alone. It is about the courage to create, the courage to dream, and the courage to care. Therefore I offer you this." She stepped closer and placed the crown in his hands. It was not a command nor a title. It was a symbol of her trust, of her heart. Rowan looked at it in disbelief, the weight of the gesture filling him with awe. "You give this to me?" He whispered. "I do," she said. not as a ruler giving power, but as one who gives her heart to another. You have reminded me that life is meant to move, and now I give you this as a token of that truth. You may walk among my people as you wish, free to inspire, free to create, free to dream. Rowan felt a warmth in his chest that he had never experienced before. He wanted to speak, to say something worthy of such a gift, but words felt too small. Instead, he bowed deeply, his eyes full of gratitude. The crowd watched in silence, knowing that this was a moment unlike any other in the history of the Dominion. The stars above shimmered, and for a long moment it felt as if the universe itself was holding its breath. Sarath reached out and placed her hand on his shoulder. "Rowan," she said softly, "you have taught the stars to dance. Now you teach us how to live." He looked up at her, a quiet smile on his face. "Then I will do my best." The night passed in celebration. Music echoed through the halls and streets, following the rhythm of the moving constellations. Artists painted, poets wrote, and children danced beneath the glowing sky. The Dominion had learned that beauty and joy were not in perfection alone, but in the courage to imagine and create. In the days that followed, Rowan continued his work, now with the freedom and trust of the Empress behind him. He traveled to distant planets, teaching the people how to see the motion in the stars and the rhythm in their lives. He inspired new inventions, new art forms, and new ways of thinking. The Empire, once still and perfect, had become alive with motion and creativity. Sarath often joined him in the observatory, studying the stars as they danced across the heavens. She asked questions, shared thoughts, and sometimes laughed softly at Rowan's small jokes. She had ruled for centuries, yet she felt young again, curious again, and free to explore the galaxy with the same wonder she had seen in Rowan. One evening, as they watched a new constellation form, Sarath turned to him. "The stars will continue to dance for generations," she said. "And my people will remember this night." Rowan nodded. "Yes, but the story is not just about the stars. It is about how we choose to live. The stars dance because we remember how to dream, and so must we." She smiled, feeling a lightness she had never known in centuries of rule. "And you remind me of that every day." The two of them stood together, gazing at the endless sky. The stars twisted and turned, forming shapes that told stories of life, courage, and hope. They were no longer just distant lights. They were companions, mirrors of the hearts that looked up at them. Finally, the Empress spoke, her voice soft but full of certainty. "Rowan, you have not only changed the stars, you have changed me. You have shown me that the heart of a ruler is not in the crown but in the courage to care." He looked at her, quietly moved. "And you have shown me that even a human from a small world can make a difference. Together we can help the galaxy remember how to dream." In that moment, the Empress reached for his hand. It was a simple gesture, yet it carried the weight of trust, respect, and something deeper that neither of them had expected. Rowan squeezed her hand gently. The crown in his other hand shimmered softly, reflecting the dancing stars above. From that night on, the Dominion knew that something extraordinary had happened. It was not just that the stars danced or that the Empire had awakened. It was that two hearts, one of a human and one of an Empress, had recognized each other across worlds and time, bound not by rules or titles but by wonder, courage, and love. The stars continued their dance and the Dominion followed, moving forward with creativity, hope, and joy. And in the center of it all, Rowan and Sarath walked together, teaching the people that life was not about being perfect, but about daring to move, daring to dream, and daring to give one's heart. The galaxy had learned a simple truth. The smallest act of curiosity could awaken the universe. And the Empress, who had once found all things boring, finally understood that the heart was the most powerful gift of all.